As President Trump now, for about a week, has had no kind words for Vladimir Putin. Yesterday saying his patience with the Russian leader is running out as negotiations for a ceasefire with Ukraine continue to just drag on.
I'm not happy with Putin. I can tell you that much right now, because he's killing a lot of people. And a lot of them are his soldiers and their soldiers, mostly. And it's now up to 7,000 a week. And I'm not happy with Putin. A lot of people are dying. And it should end. And I don't know. We get a lot of thrown at us by Putin.
So General Jack Keane is here, and General, good morning to you. Listen, he has been not shy to talk about this, almost by the day when he's in front of a camera. Another clip from yesterday about sending weapons to Ukraine. Watch here.
We want to put defensive weapons because Putin is not. He's not treating human beings right. He's killing too many people. So we're sending some defensive weapons to Ukraine, and I've approved that.
So here at Wall Street Journal editorial board, Trump calls out the Putin charade arming Kyiv as realism rooted in America's security interests. Really seems like the tide is turning on this. I'm getting hit very hard, not happy. I'm disappointed with Putin. I don't know what Putin can capture in the near term. Maybe it's territory. I just don't know how much. What would the commander-in-chief do now to reverse that?
Well, it's not so much the territory for Putin, because he hasn't really gained much in the last 18 months to 2 years, to be frank about it. He's in very small tactical gains, if you've reported up at the map, time and time again. So what is he really about? He really wants us out of supporting Ukraine. And that's why he's dragged out these negotiations. You know, he talks nice with the president. I want peace, Mr. President, just like you do. I really want to return to the economic benefit that both of our countries had when we had better relationships. And that's the happy talk. But on the ground, you can see what he's doing. He's largely targeting civilians. And he wants to put pressure on Zelensky as a result of that, to make even more concessions going forward. Putin is a defined war criminal. There is absolutely no getting around this. Not only has he committed genocide against mass population, and there's 4 different mass grave sites in different cities that reflect it, but he's targeting civilians in these cities. He targets hospitals and he targets schools. There's no accident that a school gets hit or a hospital. This is all to break the will of the Ukrainian people. The president is on to him. He's given him every chance here to work this. And what he really wants to do is get the president so frustrated, Bill and Dana, that he walks away and doesn't support Ukraine. Well, the president is frustrated. But guess what? He's not walking away. And he's providing military assistance to Ukraine that they desperately need to fend off these attacks. Now, 700 things in the air at one time, 500-600 of them are drones coming at Ukraine now nightly, to include ballistic missiles. And the ballistic missiles are the most difficult thing for them to stop. They used to stop 98% of everything several months ago. A few weeks ago it was 95%. Now it's down to 70%. That means things are getting through and they are killing and wounding people. And the target are civilians. And President Trump is on to this. He gets more detailed briefings than I obviously have information to. And he knows that this killing is going to continue, and Putin is fully intended to do that. He wants to break the will of the United States and also undermine Europe's support for Ukraine so he can do what? Take the country. He's never given that up.
I get the sense that there could be escalation here. We'll see whether or not that's the case, and if so, where it goes, and whether or not Putin backs down, as historically sometimes he is shown to do. Quickly, on the Middle East, I don't know what comes of Gaza and the hostages, but they're at a sticking point right now. Steve Witkoff said this on the ceasefire. Watch.
We're in proximity talks now, and we had 4 issues, and now we're down to 1 after 2 days of proximity talks. So we are hopeful that by the end of this week, we will have an agreement that will bring us into a 60-day ceasefire.
And Maria sat down with Benjamin Netanyahu while he was here in Washington. It seems as if the sticking point is, where do the IDF soldiers deploy themselves in a newly framed Gaza? Just need a quick answer on all that, General, as you see it today.
Yeah, what Hamas wants is the Israelis withdraw to the periphery of Gaza, the Israeli border and Egypt border. The Israelis want to stay in something they refer to as the Morag corridor, which is north of Rafah, goes east to west about 10 miles or so. They want to outpost that. They are pulling away from the outposts at Nitzium and the Philadelphia corridor to accommodate Hamas, but they want to maintain this. That, I believe, is the sticking point. I do think it will get resolved because both people now, Hamas and Israel, are interested in getting some resolution here. Hamas needs a break. 60-day ceasefire will give it to them. Israel wants the hostages back, those that can be provided alive as well as deceased.
Okay.
I think that's where we are, Bill.
We hope for that. Thank you, General. Nice to see you again. Jack Keane, thank you for your insight.
Great talking to both of you.
You too, Dana.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.